Today I'll teach you how to populate repeater control using DataReader in ASP.NET. So let's start. I'll start by adding a repeater control. Now I will explain you some basic information that this particular repeater control will display data in HTML table format, and hence I am making use of a HTML table element inside the header template. As you can see, I am making use of header template to define the columns for the HTML table. I would like to explain you that a repeater control consists of three elements: header template, and there is a item template, and there is a footer template. Header template, as the name suggests, remains on top. In between comes the item template, which is actually the data which comes from database. And at the end comes the footer template, which, as the name suggests, remains at the bottom. So that's the reason I am putting the table and tag in the footer template. Now little information about the item template. Item template will repeat the data for the repeater. For example, you are getting 10 records from the database table, then it will show the particular element 10 times. For example, here I am adding a table row tr element, and in between I am adding the label elements for the data. So this particular block of HTML code will be repeated 10 times if I am getting 10 records from the database table. Now continuing further, as you can see, I am making use of ASP.NET label controls to bind data from the database. So here I am using eval function, and I am assigning data from the field to the text property of the label. In similar way, for the other two labels, I am doing the same thing. I am assigning the field value using the eval function to the text property of the label. Let's move to the code behind. We'll start by adding some namespaces. So the very first namespace, system.data, then system.data.sql client, and finally system.configuration. Here I'll be creating a class, and I am adding some properties. Now I am creating a method get customers. So here I have created a string variable, and inside that I am reading the connection string from the web.config file. I have created an object of SQL connection class, and I have passed the connection string variable to it in the constructor. Next I am creating an object of SQL command class, and I am passing the SQL query to read the data from the customers table, and SQL connection object to it in the constructor. Now I am creating a generic list collection of customer class object. Here I am making use of SQL DataReader to fetch the records from the database table. The SQL DataReader is generated from execute reader function of the command class. The SQL DataReader is created inside the using clause so that it is disposed automatically after the task is done. The records of the database table is read inside the while loop, which will run until the read function of the SQL DataReader returns a record. Inside the while loop, the data is wrapped in a customer class object and inserted into the generic list collection created earlier. In the end, generic list collection of customer class object is written. Now inside the page load event handler, I am writing the if notice postback condition. get customers method is assigned to the data source property of the repeater control. And finally, the data bind function is called. Now we can run the code and check it. The data from the database has been successfully fetched. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon. Goodbye.